I had someone who was a first-time attendee say how much they appreciated feeling comforted by the fact that they often feel these challenges are unique to their business. And in coming and hearing from everyone, they were comforted by realizing that across these industries and even across geographies, we had a lot of different areas in the room. There are people at different parts of the journey, but everyone is sort of navigating the same challenges. Welcome to the Unscripted Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Nicastro. This is going to be a quick one, and it's going to be a solo one. I am on my way home from our Future of Field Service Live event in Cologne, Germany. But as I always do, I wanted to record a quick solo episode and share with everyone a bit of a recap of yesterday's event. So as I mentioned, we were in Cologne. This is our third Future of Field Service Live event in Germany, but first time in the city of Cologne. It was a great day, great location on the Rhine, and we had a wonderful lineup of speakers. So we started the day with a bit of the lay of the land and my state of the industry overview. Our first speaker was Jorn Lindstedt, who is the Vice President for Global Customer Service at Rolls-Royce Power Systems. Now, Jorn is in the Power Systems group, but he has been with Rolls-Royce for over 18 years, and he's worked in different divisions in that time. So he has a lot of knowledge about the company's history in servitization. Rolls-Royce is known for its innovative Power by the Hour offering. In many ways, I think was the originator of the servitization concept. But in his division today, the Power Systems division, they are still working on servitizing that part of the business and figuring out what makes sense from an advanced services offering in the power system space. So he talked about some of his historical knowledge, having worked in the aviation part of the business, but also how that applies to the way that the power systems business is transforming today and that idea of continual innovation. So he had some wonderful insights. He talked a lot about important considerations, some of the things that you have to balance, and some of the pragmatic steps that it takes to sort of work through that advanced services journey. And it was a really great conversation. A big part of it obviously tied in with talent and figuring out how to offer more flexibility to talent because that's, what everyone wants. We also talked about how the servitization journey really hinges on the ability to execute service flawlessly. And so a lot of those considerations. So it was a great session, very knowledgeable person and a really good conversation. Next up, we had Clinton Vandermeer. I'm sure I didn't say that correctly, Clinton, I'm sorry, who is the head of global service and project management at TOMRA Recycling. So Clinton spoke about the importance of thinking big and specifically how to set a compelling strategic vision for service. So I really love this session because Clinton also has a lot of experience in service. He's been in his role at TOMRA for just 2 years. And so he's coming into the organization to do a lot of this innovation. And he talked about the necessity of really thinking outside of the box, of really pushing boundaries, of really working to shift legacy mindset. And he also, though, talked about how you have to think also about how to give that to folks in bite-sized chunks if it's something that is going to be a bit overwhelming for them. So we talked about the importance of thinking big, but then he also talked about how he has set his strategy in a way that is aggressive but attainable and inspiring but relatable, which I just loved. He talked about the fact that he has a quite intense 10-year vision. He calls that his North Star. That is what he's focused on in 10 years. But from the perspective of sharing his strategy within the organization, he has a 5-year vision and then a strategy year by year. So talking about thinking big, But when you're communicating that vision to someone, being able to make sure that it's digestible and it isn't too overwhelming, et cetera. Part of his vision for 2035 is that field technicians will be able to work, I think he said, from their laptop in a coffee shop with flip-flops on. And I love that he's thinking that way because he's really thinking about what's possible and what would help the industry and be more appealing to new waves of talent. We also talked a lot in that session about the importance of storytelling and what that looks like communicating a strategy and a vision to different stakeholders. So that was another really great session. We took a little break for lunch. And then in the afternoon, our first session was with Daniel Trable, who is the director of field service for EMEA at Thermo Fisher Scientific. You may recognize Daniel's name because he was on the podcast not too long ago. And we had a session talking about how to modernize the field service talent approach to drive greater diversity and impact. This made a lot of sense because talent came up in both conversations in our morning sessions. And so Daniel was able to really put a lot of context to why diversity is so important, not just because we're struggling with talent or we need to find new ways to find new talent, but because of the value it brings to the business. And then he was able to share some of the specific steps Thermo has taken to review and reshape job postings, to even redefine and reconfigure service roles to create opportunities for people that didn't have certain certifications and also people that wanted more flexible work structure and not as much travel, and how that's helped them to make service more attractive to candidates that maybe wouldn't have been interested in it before, how it's allowed them to bring more women into field service and then work to advance those women throughout the ranks of the organization. So some really good specifics about how they did that, how it's impacted their business, how they're now expanding that focus outside of just service, and what the future might hold, and some of the forward-looking things that we could be thinking about to take this forward. I really, really loved this session because it gave such good specific advice to folks, because I think I even said as we were kicking things off, a lot of organizations are very cognizant of the talent challenge. They are very quick to complain a lot about it. Not nearly as many are doing what Thermo has done, which is really accept the reality and get very, very creative on what to do differently. So I think it's just a wonderful story to show what's possible when you just essentially stop making excuses and start forcing yourself to adapt and think differently. It was also interesting because there was a woman in the audience who is a field service engineer, and she was able to weigh in and contribute to the conversation as well, which was just serendipitous and really cool. The last interview session of the day was with Jelle Coppens, who is product domain expert for service and repair at Electrolux. And we talked in that session about the ways that Electrolux is working to maximize service resource utilization. I liked how this session fit in because, again, when we think about, the challenges field service organizations have today to meet customer demands, we talk a lot about needing to bring in new talent, needing to train talent up, needing to retain talent. We don't talk as much about the areas where we may be drastically sometimes underutilizing the talent that we do have. So this was a really good look at how Electrolux has embarked on a service transformation journey to make sure that they have that visibility, that they're able to maximize utilization, minimize idle time. But we also talked about the need to balance that with not just trying to wring every last ounce of productivity out of a person, making sure we keep in mind that the technicians are people. They need to have work-life balance. We need to be thinking about how we balance those things, but certainly thinking about it from the perspective of how we use technology to work smarter and make sure that we are complementing all of our efforts from the perspective of innovation and strategy and modernizing our talent approach with the very pragmatic practices of making sure we have those foundational systems in place where we don't have these significant inefficiencies in our processes, and we're making sure that we're working smart. We talked in some of the breakout sessions. So after Yella's session, we had some roundtable discussions, and AI came up a lot. Some people were saying they're sick of hearing about it. Others were talking about, wanting to see how people are using it. So there was conversations on that continuum. But we talked about the fact that, number one, as Electrolux is doing, you need to really find the ways to make sure that you have that solid system and processes in place that you can build upon. And then Yella spoke about how, not only is the company using IFS's AI-powered planning and scheduling optimization engine, but they have a lot of plans for the future about how they can layer in different areas of automation through different parts of the workflow and basically continue to expand on that concept of utilizing resources well, working smart, et cetera. So we ended the day after those roundtable discussions with some drinks and networking. We were fortunate to have beautiful weather in Cologne, and it was a great day. I enjoyed myself, as I always do. I had someone who was a first-time attendee say how much they appreciated feeling comforted by the fact that they often feel these challenges are unique to their business. And in coming and hearing from everyone, they were comforted by realizing that across these industries and even across geographies, we had a lot of different areas in the room. There are people at different parts of the journey, but everyone is sort of navigating the same challenges. I also had someone who has come to all 3 events we've done in Germany who said he was a little nervous that it would be repetitive, and was very pleasantly surprised that with the content, he was able to see the progression of concepts and themes over that time and see how people really are, maybe not super rapidly, but working to evolve and keep pace with the change that is happening. So I really appreciated that feedback. I really appreciate having these opportunities to, not only meet with these folks in person myself, but to allow them this space to come together and see people scanning each other's LinkedIn profiles and saying, let's catch up. I want to hear more about this. I think the woman field service engineer got a few job offers throughout the day. So there's a lot of value that comes from getting together in these ways. So it was a great event. It's the last one for a bit. So I'm going to focus on spending some time with my family and just doing my weekly work from home. But we did recently launch the Future of Field Service Standout 50 Leadership Awards, which I'm really excited about, and we will continue to share about. Nominations are open until July 15th. And at the next event, which will take place alongside IFS Unleashed, we will be announcing our first ever top 50. So very excited about that, and also excited to have a bit of a break. So as always, you can find information on the awards and everything else we have going on at futureoffieldservice.com. The podcast is published in partnership with IFS. You can learn more at ifs.com. And as always, thank you for listening.